West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Virginia holds the first major election since 2020 next week, and the race for governor there looking very tight. Democrat Terry McAuliffe running for his old job against Republican Glenn Younkin, who is in a race that tests the Republican Party's appeal as its base remains highly conservative, very pro-Trump. The former president matters in GOP primaries. We've seen that, but he may not help in this general election. Take this flyer hitting many voters' mailboxes right now. The Republican Younkin in that red hat, touting an endorsement from Trump. And the thrust of that message is accurate. But this is not a mailer from Younkin targeting diehard Trump fans or those kind of households. Closer look here, you see, shows Democrats are sending this out to households that they think are repelled by Trump-style Republicans. And there are many of them in Virginia. Now, some Republicans obviously do fine, but Trump's not one of them. He lost the state badly in 2020 by 10 points. So politically, it's Democrats who are doing everything to bring Trump into this race right now in the home stretch, which sheds light on a recent kind of bumbling outing last night where Trump had suggested that he would touch down in Virginia in the final days, a claim that was quickly walked back. And while many Republican candidates do talk like Trump, there's new reporting that says Younkin's headquarters was caught off guard and scrambling to shoot down any idea that Trump was going to show up and be part of their closing argument. Today, Younkin didn't even bother dodging the questions. He said flatly, Trump's not coming, and they haven't spoken.
Would you rally with Donald Trump if he came to Virginia this week?
Well, he's not coming.
Have you spoken?
No, I haven't. I haven't spoken with him. This is about Virginia.
That's their closing argument. We always hear all politics is local. Washington Post notes that Younkin has also tried to position himself sometimes as a Trump wannabe, going right, and other times as a sensible businessman claiming the center. So which is it? I mean, it could be a little bit of both. Plenty of politicians are known to shapeshift. Or it could be that Virginia is now assessing someone who campaigns from the center, but would govern from the world of MAGA. A longtime Republican operative who worked for Governor Jeb Bush captured that combo recently while talking with our colleague, Brian Williams.
They're looking right now in Virginia at the Glenn Younkin strategy, of being Donald Trump in the sheets and Mitt Romney in the streets, and seeing if Glenn can kind of unite the two tribes together.
Hang on, I'm still writing Donald Trump in the street. Well, I can finish it later.
And that moderate poet is our guest right now, former Bush and RNC official Tim Miller, who writes for The Bulwark. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Ari. Not quite Kendrick, but pretty good.
Not quite K-Dot. You said it. Explain it in your view of what we just went through on the ground.
Well, look, I was mocking it a couple weeks ago, but as we look at these polls closing, I think this is working for Glenn Youngkin right now. And I think this needs to be a warning sign for Democrats. What Glenn Youngkin is doing is he's not doing enough to anger the Trump base, right? I think the Democrats got this gift in Georgia where a lot of the Trump base was so upset over the election, stealing stuff that they didn't show up. We're not necessarily seeing that in the polls right now in Virginia. We'll see. So he's managing to not anger the Trump base whereas in Northern Virginia and in the Richmond suburbs, he's coming off as moderate. And now here's the thing. Like, I worked for a lot of moderates. I worked for John Huntsman and Romney and Jeb. I don't know that Glenn Youngkin is moderate, but he seems moderate compared to Trump, right? Like, he's not going crazy anti-vaxxer. He's not going election thief. He's not, he seems sensible. And so he's doing this Romney-Trump two-step where the people in kind of rural Virginia who are upset at the Democrats, upset about critical race theory and yada, 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 are going to go with them. And the people in Northern Virginia who maybe used to be Republicans, who crossed over and voted for Joe Biden and are desperate for this sort of, return to normalcy, are grabbing onto them. And so the Democrats need to drive that wedge. And I think that's why you see, the mailer and things like that. But I think it's unclear whether or not it's working at this point.
That mailer, if it's targeted right, it can really look at people who are not sporadics, people who would be voting in this off-year election and might be conservative or ex-Republican. That would be the targeting. Do you think that moves people? Do you think that works?
Look, I think it worked in 2020. But look, does that work in 2021? People have a lot of other problems, right? I think that there's a lot of illegitimate complaints about the Virginia schools, right? The critical race theory and all that stuff. But I think there are legitimate complaints, with teachers unions and folks being out of class. I think people had real grievances about that. Some of that's unfair, but they're real. Prices going up. And so you get this mailer and you're like, I hate Donald Trump. But I'm hoping he goes away. A lot of these voters are not as obsessed with politics as we are. Like, for me, anybody who's for Donald Trump, that's disqualifying. But there's a lot of voters, in particularly Northern Virginia, former Republicans, who aren't that adamant about that, right? And so the question is this going to work? And if it doesn't work for Terry McAuliffe, that needs to be a big wake-up call to the Democrats. That Trump scaremongering isn't going to be enough.
On that, you put your finger on that. That's a big question here. And Terry McAuliffe is not an unknown. His name's familiar to many. He started with the Clintons, ran the party, has been the governor there. So he has that potential distinction as just not a quote-unquote generic Democrat. And yet he's still struggling, to your point, which is the other side of this race. Headline here, Biden easily won Virginia, notes the AP. Why is McAuliffe struggling? Concerned that his experience works against him in a political environment that continues to favor outsiders. Your view?
Yeah, look, and I think Virginia has a long history of this, right? It's the first election. It's this weird off year to be kind of a check, right? And anytime a president of one party goes in, there's always this unhappiness. We remember this with Obama in 2008, and they couldn't, Obamacare and the stimulus, right? And they swerved the other way. And then with Trump, they swerved towards Northam. So there's this tradition, I think, of voters, these sort of, less partisan swing voters deciding that they want to give the other party a shot. I think that is what is hurting McAuliffe right now. The question is, can he run on, he had a successful governorship. Can he run on a successful governorship and then wedging Youngkin with Trump in Northern Virginia and by, telling the voters outstate that he's not Trumpy enough for them? Can that work for him? I felt pretty good about that 6 weeks ago, but the numbers are really turning towards Youngkin, and I think that this is going to be an important test case that will teach Democrats a lot for next November.
And do you think that Democrats get anywhere raising the alarm about democracy in America, or does that play as process, even if that's not true? I mean, there's real concerns, but politically, does it play as process when people have kitchen table problems right now?
Yeah, I want to say yes, Ari, but so I'm putting on my analyst hat here. Tim Miller, us at the Bulwark, we're scared as hell about democracy, right? And we're raising the flag about that. We had a bipartisan letter we ran in it yesterday. I think it's the most urgent issue. But not every voter is engaged like that, right? And particularly in a midterm. I think it's different in a presidential year. And so I think that it's good to raise the alarm about it, but Democrats need to get back to the kitchen table issues and need to turn Trump into the extremist. I think that the Republicans have been much better about kind of branding the far left of the Democratic Party than the Democrats have been doing in reverse. And I think that branding the Republicans as extremists in their own right, outside of the auspices of Trump, and focusing on those kitchen table issues are going to be their best bet.
It is Friday, the 29th of October of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Yes, we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. That's why, well, for some it may be just a liquid diet today. And the weekend because it's Halloween weekend. Fortunately, now I don't mean to be an old codger, a spoil sport, and a party pooper, but fortunately it could be raining precipitously this weekend, and it may be too rainy for the kids to be going out, so maybe they'll just go to, the town center where the businesses will have some sugar-coated candy. And that's what candy is. It's sugar, and it's coated, and it's candy. And I can assure folks, no one is getting marijuana, pot-laden candy on Halloween. I had to assure my mother that wasn't the case. For some reason, she started talking about, and those little kids, they could be getting pot candy. And I had to tell her, Mom, that pot candy's too expensive. No one is handing out pot candy to the kids. The kids are going to have to find it on their own. They're not getting it from anybody. And when I told her, I said, look, no one, okay, look, you got Mars bars and you got pot candy. Okay, no one's giving the pot candy to the kids. They're not giving it to anybody. They're taking it themselves. Give me a break. So, poor Mom. She's a little confused. But that's okay. The brainwashing just never stops. It doesn't stop here. Every local channel is a Sinclair channel. Can't get away from them. You think you're watching NBC, and then suddenly it's the local Sinclair channel telling you, hey, yeah, question everything, even your own existence. And now, speaking of our own existence, the extent that people like a Zuckerberg would go to pretty much rebrand, what is this Meta thing? Well, we know exactly what it is. It's Meta Life. It's Second Life. Meta Life. They're going to ensure that everyone is covered. Big Brother right there in your PC, laptop, or electronic device. Okay. So that's what they were saying, is that, old Mark, he's on to more loftier things now. He's not burdened by this stupid fascism that's like arisen in our society and around the world and make money off of it. You can make more money by putting it in the virtual world. That's great. Now, I fear or assume that Meta will turn out pretty much like Second Life. That's why I call it Meta Life. And if you remember, one of the reasons that Second Life fell by the wayside, shall we say, is that there were a bunch of idiots out there with their penis icons. Oh, I'm going to be a penis. All right, you're going to be a dick. So now they're going to have Nazi swastikas on it. And they're going to be running around Meta, harassing people. Right? You know that. You're going to have Nazi penis icons calling you a commie baby eater. And as soon as you call them a dick, Meta will suspend you for bullying the Nazi penis icons. It happened in the two-dimensional part of Facebook, and now it's Meta. But on the other hand, maybe I'm too old for games. Could be. When I heard about video games and all that. Oh, I shouldn't say that because I did play, well, Leisure Suit Larry a few times. Remember that game? And there was some space cats. Was that it? There was some shoot 'em ups that were pretty fun too, where you made a track, and as you got to each level, you could go on, and the game would get increasingly more complex. And that was rather fun. That was way back when the well was still around. Jesus. But I'm not really a gamer, as they say, and meta seems too much like gamer stuff to me. I'm not going to get into this issue about, well, we should be meeting in real life, because there's a lot of people actually where this virtual world is the only way that they do get out in life, because, they're burdened by physical disabilities. So one should consider that too. I'm not going to condemn the whole virtual world out there when that's the only way people can have a life, because, hey, I'm a human. Unlike Mark Zuckerberg, what is that guy? Plus, what's he doing with Sweet Ray's barbecue sauce as a bookend? Who does that? An alien from outer space does that. Keep telling everybody, and I'm going to be telling everybody for the next 5 years, when it turns out that Mark Zuckerberg is an alien from outer space, I'm going to be saying, I told you so. But it won't matter, because they live. Where is this going? I have no idea. It's Friday, and all I've had is coffee. Okay. Haven't had the French 77s yet. It's a tad too early. I have things to do. Yes. Yeah, there's going to be a fair storm coming in, and I've still got to figure out how to move this octagonal gazebo. It's not that heavy, but it's just unwieldy. And it may turn out that I'm the only one moving this thing. So I've got to figure out some sort of bracing apparatus that I can lift the gazebo up and just, I only need to move it about 8 feet at the max. So that whenever we have some drying out, these cement coater people are supposed to come in and put the coating on the cement. And we need it because it does get a little slippery out here. I need to have a bit of stickiness on the walking surfaces so that I can get my mom in and out of the house and to a vehicle when needed. Indeed. Well, Mom's still making some progress. She had physical therapy yesterday. She's speaking about being so sore today. Well, part of what they're doing at this point is figuring out what a baseline is. And they don't know what a baseline is until they push your limits. So they know what her limits are, and she's sore. So, but I'm an old jock, and usually sore means, well, that could be good. No pain, no gain. Don't get into that game, please don't. Because it's no good for you, and you'll suffer it later in life. Believe me. But, yeah, she's a little sore today, but she's doing well. She's progressing nicely. Dealing with some bacterial stuff that's lingering, but, things that she had from before, but we want to make sure that that doesn't rear its ugly head and cause even more problems. So we're waiting for the Petri dish test to come back, and I was hoping it would come back quicker so that I could pick up the antibiotics like now. Because she needs them right now, not 48 to 72 hours, meaning, we'll wait after Halloween. Nah, we need it now. So there's that. And so I guess I'm feeling okay myself. I got pretty sick from COVID, as you know. Not as sick as my mom. I didn't have a heart attack. No, I didn't have one of those. But yeah, I was laid down low for quite a while and probably still have some lingering effects. My stamina, knock on wood, seems to be increasing. But as soon as I say that, the virus hears it and says, oh yeah, well, we're going to kick your ass again. Though I was assured that I probably have some good antibodies right now to ward off the virus. But I'm not going to just be cavalier about it. I'm still hesitant about being around a bunch of idiots who don't care. And I'm still masking up. I'm not gloving, but I am washing my hands quite a bit, though I did before. So I am taking the precautions, even though I'm supposed to be Superman now with all these antibodies. That's not what the doctor said. That's what the maggots say. Okay? And the only reason they say that is because they are not Supermen. They are not Ubermensch. But anybody who is, they're going to denigrate and make sure that, you take them down a notch and they have all the kryptonite wrapped around their bodies. Well, so much for that. I've been saying that for a while now. Let's get into the curated part of the show here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. At the top, as we were starting off, well, even though that Younkin guy has eluded Trump on the campaign trail, and for good reason, he's still a MAGA in sheep's clothing. Do not forget it. On the rest of the menu, testifying at a landmark House hearing, the top oil giants denied spreading disinformation on climate change. The Justice Department has signaled a shift to a tougher stance by the government toward white-collar crime, and Democratic-stronghold Fulton County, Georgia, will hold elections amid a state takeover threat by the GOP. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the EU top court ordered Poland to pay $1,200,000 a day in its long-running judicial dispute. And violence against Brazil's indigenous people saw a dramatic rise last year. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, right by the social media scroll, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, right there by the social media scroll, across the page to the left near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds to us once a month, just one coffee once a month, that makes a big dent in the bills, the amount of money we pay for our bills. It helps because we pull that money with what we pull out of our own wallets and pay those bills, fly under the radar, and continue this resistance against, well, really, there's no kidding ourselves now. It is a Nazi takeover of the United States of America, and we just cannot let it happen without some sort of obstacle in their way. Jeez. I mean, it's our civic duty now, isn't it? And it is. So thank you for your generosity over all these many years, and thank you to those of you who will consider being generous in the future. Machinery wears out, software needs to be upgraded, and bills need to be paid. And we thank you for allowing us to do all of that and fulfill our civic duty, as we have stated. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. I take care of me, and who am I? Well, of course, I'm Justice Putnam, and you can find me at Justice Putnam on Twitter. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on social media platforms like Twitter. And is it going to be Meta, or is Meta the parent company? It's still Facebook. They haven't changed my Facebook stuff on Facebook. Why do I go there? I don't know. Family, I guess. But anyway, it gets posted over there and all those other social media platforms too that just happen to be out there. So check it out. And the show notes and links are very important because I got to remind folks, that's where the real reportage is. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and do please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because we have the chef's table with the amuse-bouche. Okay, save a little room. And that's why it's just a little kiss at the end. Not before. Here we do it at the end. Oh, boy. Anyway, this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Matthew Daly. Top executives of ExxonMobil and other oil giants denied spreading disinformation about climate change as they sparred yesterday, Thursday, with congressional Democrats over allegations that the industry concealed evidence about the dangers of global warming. They're gaslighting us, literally and figuratively. Testifying at a landmark House hearing. That's funny. When I first saw that sentence, I thought it said terrifying. Yeah, it's that kind of a weekend, isn't it? Anyway, testifying at a landmark House hearing, ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods said the company has, quote, long acknowledged the reality and risks of climate change, and it has devoted significant resources to addressing those risks, end quote. Meaning, we got to make our oil derricks higher. All right. The oil giants' public statements on climate are and have always been truthful, fact-based, and consistent with mainstream climate science, Woods says. No, it hasn't. Democrats immediately challenged the statement by Woods and other oil executives, accusing them of engaging in a decades-long industry-wide campaign to spread disinformation about the contribution of fossil fuels to global warming. Follow the petrodollars. They are obviously lying like the tobacco executives were, said Representative Carolyn Maloney, Democrat from New York, chairwoman of the House Oversight Committee. And of course, you know, she was referring to the 1994 hearing with tobacco executives who famously testified they didn't believe nicotine was addictive, even though they made it into crack nicotine by putting ammonia with it and made it into crack nicotine. Jeez. The reference was one of several to the tobacco hearing as Democrats sought to pin down oil executives on whether they believe in climate change and that burning fossil fuels such as oil contributes to global warming. Maloney said at the end of the nearly 7-hour hearing that she will issue subpoenas for documents that were requested by the committee but not furnished by the oil companies. Republicans accuse Democrats of grandstanding over an issue popular with their base, as President Joe Biden's climate agenda teeters in Congress because the Nazis do not love America. They want America to fail. And if it brings the whole world crashing down, well, it just means they won. Kentucky Representative James Comer, the top repug on the oversight panel. Now, Matthew Daly didn't say repug, but I do. Called the hearing a distraction from the crises that the Biden administration's policies have caused. 4 years, and Joe Biden has caused the crises. And of course, this guy citing the gasoline prices that have risen by $1 per gallon since January. Well, I would blame OPEC. You know, the deal that Trump made. You Nazi. The hearing comes after months of public efforts by Democrats to obtain documents and other information on the oil industry's role in stopping climate action over multiple decades. The fossil fuel industry has had scientific evidence about the dangers of climate change since at least 1977, yet spread denial and doubt about the harm its products cause, undermining science and preventing meaningful action on climate change, Maloney and other Democrats said. Do you agree that climate change is an existential threat, yes or no? Maloney asked Shell Oil President Gretchen Watkins. I agree that this is a defining challenge for our generation, absolutely, Watkins replied, with a little help on the accent by moi. Watkins, Wood, and other oil executives said they agreed with Maloney on the existence and threat posed by climate change, but they refused her request to pledge that their companies would not spend money, either directly or indirectly, to oppose efforts to reduce planet-warming greenhouse gas emissions, because that makes them money. You know, they can make money in other ways, but they like it this way. I not only like to make the reference to the tobacco companies in these hearings and whatnot, I also like to draw on a little bit of history of when the whale oil industry was on the outs. And they just hung on and hung on and hung on until almost the last whale was brought to market. Chris Prentice of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The U.S. Justice Department outlined policy changes aimed at rooting out repeated corporate misconduct and prioritizing prosecutions of individuals, signaling a shift to a tougher stance by the government toward white-collar crime. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco said the department's top priority regarding corporate crime is to prosecute the people who commit and benefit from misconduct. Accountability starts with the individuals responsible for criminal conduct, Monaco, the Justice Department's number 2 official, told an industry conference. When assessing penalties and resolutions, Monaco said the department will take a broader view of a company's misconduct, be ready to install third-party monitors, and have new demands for cooperation. Her remarks signal a shift in the department's approach toward white-collar crime under Democratic President Joe Biden, after former President Donald Trump's administration took a much more business-friendly stance. Some people would call it mob-friendly, but that's just me. I'm a romantic. White-collar prosecutions fell to an all-time low during Trump's administration, according to data compiled by Syracuse University. Even before then, the Justice Department was criticized for failing to hold Wall Street executives accountable for the 2007-2009 financial crisis. And when you tried, remember what happened? Yeah, the Tea Party came out. The department will require companies to name all people involved in misconduct in order to receive credit for cooperation, as opposed to the previous policy under which companies provided names of people deemed to have been substantially involved. The department will also require prosecutors to consider a company's full criminal, civil, and regulatory record when considering how to resolve an investigation into wrongdoing, Monaco said. Previously, the department focused primarily on similar types of misconduct when weighing a settlement. Monaco said the department is reviewing whether it is appropriate to enter into agreements with companies that defer or waive criminal prosecutions in exchange for fines and promises of better behavior when the business is a repeat offender. Between 10% and 20% of all significant corporal criminal resolutions involve repeat offenders, Monaco said. The Justice Department recently notified 2 companies they are in breach of such agreements. The department also will reverse its shift away from requiring corporate monitors. The use of these independent firms, which tend to be costly for companies, fell out of favor during the Trump administration. It will also embed a new squad of FBI agents within the department's criminal fraud section, which is tasked with pursuing economic crimes. You can rest assured the Nazis in Congress are going to be against this. The policy changes are steps in the right direction, said Rick Claypool of the watchdog group Public Citizen. Claypool said the Justice Department has quite a hill to climb to get back to how it handled white-collar crime under Democratic former President Barack Obama, let alone try to shift course to the prosecutorial scheme that companies actually fear. Kate Brumback of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Elections in Georgia's heavily Democratic Fulton County on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, could decide more than Atlanta's next mayor and other local races. Republicans are watching for any mistakes that could justify a state takeover using a sweeping new law. Struggles to deliver a smooth voting process during the early months of the coronavirus pandemic trained a national spotlight on the state's most populous county. That only intensified as Trump and his allies pushed unproven claims that widespread fraud robbed him of victory last year. Against that backdrop, GOP state lawmakers empowered the Republican-controlled state election board to remove local election officials. Democrats said the provision was written with Fulton in mind, and Republicans soon launched a state review that could result in the replacement of the Democratic-controlled county election board with the state board's appointees. The Atlanta mayor's race on Tuesday is the most high-profile municipal election in Fulton County. It is a wide-open contest with 14 candidates, so a runoff is likely. Any missteps could be pounced on as evidence the county is not competent to run its own elections, which means the GOP are going to make sure it's sabotaged. We know that there's a target on our backs, County Board of Commissioners Chairman Rob Pitts said. They're trying to use Fulton County and our voters to score political points, but I am just not going to let that happen. Amid a flood of criticism, the County Election Board voted in February to fire Elections Director Rick Barron, only to have his decision rejected by the Board of Commissioners. The drumbeat of negativity has been tough on county staffers. Barron dismisses much of it as politically motivated, noting that at a statewide convention of county election officials, Fulton received a regional award for overcoming obstacles during the 2020 election cycle. Our peers nominated us for that, and we got a thundering standing ovation, he said. Republican lawmakers in July requested a performance review to assure voter confidence in our elections and help to rectify elections process deficiencies, except the only question that the election ever had was brought up by the Nazis. How many court cases did Trump go through? 60, 63, and he lost every single one, but that's still not enough. Some observers believe the problems with the county's election administration have been overblown. If you look hard enough in a county that is as large and as populated as Fulton, you're going to find problems, said Daniel Franklin, Associate Professor Emeritus of Political Science at Georgia State U. But I'll bet you'd find problems elsewhere, too. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a longtime critic of Fulton County, I told you he's a repug, don't trust that guy, seized on the case of 2 elections workers who were fired this month after colleagues reported seeing them shredding voter registration applications. New allegations have come to light that Fulton County has been shredding 300 applications related to Georgia's municipal elections, Raffensperger said in a news release, calling for a Justice Department investigation. Now, Fulton officials chafed at that characterization. We weren't seen to have done it, Barron said, adding that Fulton officials immediately contacted both the Secretary of State's office and the DA's office. 2 of our employees did something, and we then reported it to them because we're interested in being transparent and making sure that the situation was investigated. Franklin said Raffensperger's focus on Fulton County makes political sense. After rejecting Trump's calls to find enough votes to overturn his loss in Georgia, Raffensperger now faces GOP primary challengers, including one endorsed by Donald Trump. Let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Medieval Me Too. At first glance, alpha male director Ridley Scott may not seem the most obvious choice to helm a true life tale of 14th century betrayal, rape, and revenge that led to the last legally sanctioned duel in France. After viewing The Last Duel, though, it's hard to imagine another director who could have done better. The movie involves a knight, Jean, played by Matt Damon in possibly his best performance to date, and his frenemy, Jacques, played by an equally strong Adam Driver, who have a dispute over land and court position, and ultimately a claim that Jacques raped his wife, Marguerite, played by Killing Eve's Jodie Comer. Told from the viewpoints of the 3 main characters, the plot calls to mind the 1950 Kurosawa classic Rashomon, which also took place in feudal times and posed questions as to what really happened. However, while Rashomon seems anchored in the past, The Last Duel has a contemporary feel, especially as to how it deals with the treatment of Marguerite by male authority figures, the only authority figures there were. Along with Jacques, Marguerite literally finds herself on trial, where past comments she made about Jacques' appearance are used against her to refute the allegations. And while Jean is genuinely upset, it's reminded that in this era, rape was considered a property crime, with the victim being the husband, father, or other male guardian of the woman. If that makes you upset, well, that's the point. The cast here also includes a hard-to-recognize Ben Affleck in strong support as a libertine aristocrat. With brilliant cinematography, impressive set design, and close-up action shooting, The Last Duel was one to catch on the big screen. It's a memorable film that reminds us while lots has changed in 700 years, some things haven't. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Exactly 1,000 years ago, in the year 1021, a Viking or 2 or 3 likely wandered around the very northern tip of Newfoundland, cutting down trees.
Clearing a particular spot, or for gathering wood that might have been used as timber for construction of some type, or perhaps for boat repair. They were very careful to obviously make sure their ships were seaworthy.
Michael D. is a geoscientist at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. He says it's not news that Vikings made it to North America around this time. Scientists and scholars have surmised as much from archaeological remains in Newfoundland and by scrutinizing ancient texts, like the Icelandic sagas.
One is not really sure how literal one can take the Icelandic sagas. They contain a lot of not only inaccuracies, a lot of things that are obviously fantastical. Things like dead people speaking to them and so on.
But now Dee and his colleagues have been able to come up with a precise date, the year 1021, based on evidence these Norse visitors left behind, specifically a stump, a log, and a branch. Wood anatomists have determined that certain surfaces of that wood must have been cut by metal blades. That's a Viking technology the local indigenous people are not known to have shared. And Dee's team was able to use a cosmic occurrence, an extraordinary shower of high-energy particles from space around the year 993 to date the felling of the trees. You see, that shower of cosmic rays created an abundance of radiocarbon. When taken up by the trees, it left a lasting signature in the tree ranks, giving the scientists a key to pinpoint the year 993 in the 3 wood samples, using radiocarbon dating.
And then you see all you have to do is count the rings from there to the edge. You have to know where the edge is, the bark edge, and then you'll know that was the last growth year of the tree, or the felling date of the tree. And it just so happened that in all 3 cases, that was exactly the same year, 1021 AD.
The details are in the journal Nature. The year 1021 therefore marks the first time we know of that Europeans set foot in the Americas. But as the authors write, it also marks, quote, the earliest known year by which human migration had encircled the planet.
Ever since moving out of Africa through Europe and Asia and across the Americas, nobody had got across the Atlantic Ocean. So by this date, we know that the Atlantic Ocean was crossed for the first time.
But, as we know, it wouldn't be the last. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
It was 1963, and Only in America, recorded by Jay and the Americans, was a big hit.
I'm singer-songwriter Patty Larkin, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The group's lead singer, Jay Black, had what the New York Times described as a velvet voice and an extraordinary vocal range. Jay and the Americans was a group comprised of 4 white men, with their race and gender reflected in their music. Only in America, with its lyrics about a working-class boy who found love with a classy girl, reflected in America where for white men, particularly in the fantasy world of rock and roll, all things felt possible. However, Songfacts reports that Only in America, as first written and recorded by the Drifters, had a chorus that protested racism. Atlantic Records balked at those lyrics, the Drifters refused to release the song with new patriotic lyrics, and it ended up being recorded and released by Jay and the Americans. Only in America's message of opportunity and freedom and equality wasn't remotely true for many when it was recorded, and it still isn't remotely true today. But Jay and the Americans were a force in pop music, and their hits, some with problematic lyrics, remain a staple of every oldies playlist because their music was amazing. Jay Black died in October. He was 82.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day that the National Organization for Women, or NOW, called for a strike by women across the nation. They called the day Alice Doesn't Day. This referred to a critically acclaimed movie by the director Martin Scorsese that came out the year before entitled Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. The main character in the film is Alice Height, who pursues her dream of being a singer after she is widowed. The film was lauded by feminists as a story of women's empowerment. now used the film title and asked women to participate with the slogan, "Alice doesn't, you fill in the blank." Women were encouraged to participate in the day however they could, including refraining from volunteering, shopping, and if possible, working for one day to demonstrate their importance to the economy. Women who could not skip work were asked to wear armbands to show their solidarity with the cause. In an interview published in the Chicago Tribune, now President Karen DeCrow explained, quote, "There is a myth that women in the workforce could go home. But if they did, our economy would stop. If all the secretaries did not come to work, all things would stop." But not all women were excited about the day. Some anti-feminist women decided to protest the day by wearing pink, baking cookies, and performing other stereotypical female tasks. While now called the event a success, Time magazine deemed it a spectacular failure. One critique was that the event reflected the white middle-class dominance of the women's movement. Working-class women, and especially women of color, had a much more difficult time with holding their labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit, only expecting to top off in a high of around 62 to 63. Cloudy skies throughout the day with a slight chance of a rain shower. Winds will be light and variable, though tonight we will have periods of rain with a low around 50, and winds will be light and variable, and we're expecting about 1/4 of an inch of rain overnight, and then rain tomorrow, Saturday, with scattered thunderstorms in the afternoon, highs around 62, winds light and variable, expecting another 1/4 inch of rain, and that will be about the average for the rest of the week, or through next week, about 1/4 to 1/3 of inch of rain per each 24-hour period. Oh my. Must be fall, getting on to winter. Well, ragweed pollen is rated low outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 31 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains low at level 2. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.03 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 58 and partly cloudy. Paris is 58 with showers in the vicinity. Rome is 68 and sunny. Kyiv is 55 and fair. Kabul is 52 and fair. Hong Kong is 74 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 58 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 58 and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 54 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Rafe Kasser of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The European Union raised the stakes in a standoff with Poland over judicial independence and the primacy of EU law, with the bloc's top court fining Poland $1.2 million a day to prevent what it called serious and irreparable harm to the EU's legal order and values. The European Court of Justice imposed the penalty after a week-long war of words in which Poland told the EU to stay out of its judicial affairs, while other EU nations insisted that Warsaw could not continue to get huge EU subsidies while disregarding the bloc's democratic principles at will. You cannot pocket all the money but refuse the values, Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo said, warning Poland not to treat the EU like a cash machine. The Court of Justice decided to siphon off some of that money, saying the daily fine was necessary in order to avoid serious and irreparable harm to the legal order of the European Union and to the values on which that union is founded, in particular that of the rule of law. The EU's Executive Commission had requested the penalty until the Polish government acts to improve the functioning of the Polish Supreme Court and suspends new laws deemed to undermine judicial independence. Polish Prime Minister Michał Wojcik hinted that Poland may not respect the EU court's decision, once again arguing that it's not a proper ruling and has no legal basis because the court allegedly acted outside its jurisdiction. In July, the European Court of Justice ordered the suspension of the disciplinary chamber, but it is still operating. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki told the European Parliament last week that the chamber will be abolished, but he gave no precise time for when that would take place. He said the proper legislation will come in due time.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anthony Bodel of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Violence against Brazil's indigenous people increased last year as land disputes and invasions of their reservations rose, and the government failed to provide protection, the Catholic Church's Indigenous Missionary Council said yesterday, Thursday. Its annual report on violence against the descendants of Brazil's original inhabitants said there were 182 murders of indigenous people in 2020 compared to 113 murders in 2019, a 61% surge. There were 263 reported land invasions, an alarming increase of 137% over incursions on indigenous territory the previous year. The report blamed the government for failing to protect indigenous communities while pushing legislation that would open their reservations to commercial mining, oil and gas exploration, and the building of hydroelectric dams. Critics say Bolsonaro's comments have emboldened illegal miners, squatters, and loggers whose invasions of reservation territories have exacerbated the spread of the coronavirus. Over 800 indigenous people have died from COVID-19, according to official figures that only count deaths on reservations and not among indigenous people in Brazil's cities. Their land claims have been paralyzed. Of the 1,289 reservations in Brazil, 832 are waiting for official recognition. The second year of Bolsonaro's government saw the deepening of an extremely worrying scenario in terms of indigenous rights, territories, and lives. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.